Hi, my name is Janisha.
Hey, I'm Kahari, and we are The Village Talk, a podcast for awesome families where we discuss all things awareness, acceptance, and mental health.
So, this week we will be talking about the beginning stages of autism. We will go over exactly what autism is, signs that many kids may show, and how to go about getting a diagnosis. So, first, let's talk a little bit about ourselves. At the age of 3, my son was diagnosed with autism. I was given little to no hope that he would talk and he would require constant assistance. But with the help of my family, my village, and his therapist, my son is talking, reading, and writing with a full vocabulary. Raising a child in Gary has presented me with a set of challenges that I don't want any parent to have to go through. Hence why I started We Are the Village. We Are the Village exists to provide a fun, safe, and loving environment to any child regardless of their ability. We are currently the only child care center that offers a special education program, and we will be opening up the first autism resource center.
Mm.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Kay.
Yes, so similar to you, my daughter was diagnosed as a toddler. She was diagnosed when she was 2. And we actually received 3 different diagnoses within a year. So in February, she was diagnosed with autism. In February, she was diagnosed with autism. In August, she was diagnosed with a seizure disorder. And then in December, she was diagnosed with a genetic mutation called Rett syndrome. So needless to say, that was a very long and hard year, but you know what? It really put the fire up underneath me to educate myself. And now we have this platform where we're able to educate
Yes.
other
Yes,
people.
ma'am.
So I'm just really happy to be here and be a
Yes.
part.
I wanted to piggyback off of what you just said.
Hmm.
My son was mixed diagnosed at the age of 3 months. That's why he started receiving therapy at the age of 3 months. That's another reason why I gravitated towards you because how hard you advocated for your child's diagnosis. And I'm glad that we are
Yes.
able to sit down and do this podcast together.
Yes, it's literally the same for me, Janisha. Like when I met you, when we connected, it was at the 5K
Yes.
walk
Gary's first, by the
and
way.
Gary's first 5K walk for autism. And that was, my baby, she was newly diagnosed, probably 2 or 3 months. And I was still in that mindset like, okay, nobody's experiencing this.
Yes.
No, like nobody's parenting a child with autism. Like I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
And I seen you out here, orchestrating all of these things in the community and really advocating for your baby. And I'm like, oh
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
this is who I need to connect with. So I'm glad we get to do this.
Yes, we're okay. You are not alone. And to all of our families out there, you are not alone either. That is why we are here. So
Yes.
let's get into what is autism.
Hmm.
We want to give y'all the exact definition because I'm always getting questions about what is autism, what are the signs, how you get a diagnosis. So with this episode, we're going to cover all of those bases. Autism, or ASD, refers to a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. According to the CDC, autism affects an estimated 1 in 44 children in the United States today. We know that there is not one autism, but many subtypes, most influenced by a combination of genetics and environmental factors. I want to stop right there because when I met Kay, she introduced me to something that I had no idea, was a part of autism. So I really want her to get into detail about what Rett's is, and can you spell it for us?
Yes. So it's Rett syndrome, RETT syndrome. And I mean, it's an acquired genetic mutation. And when I say acquired, I mean that it didn't come from, it wasn't passed down from her father. It wasn't passed down from me. It's just a part of her DNA. And she presents like she does have some like classic autistic ways,
Yeah.
but she does have other more severe like physical things that we go through. So we experience seizures, we experience her losing like the useful movements of her hands. Sometimes she struggles to walk. So it comes with all of these things on top of like the classic symptoms of autism. So
Yes.
in brief, that's what Rett syndrome is.
Thank you for that.
Hmm.
Because autism is a spectrum disorder, each person with autism has a distinct set of strengths and challenges. The ways in which people with autism learn, think, and problem solve can range from highly skilled to severely skilled. Some people with ASD may require significant support in their daily lives, while others may need less support and in some cases live entirely independently. So I want to get into this because because I say that my son is high on the spectrum, or my son was diagnosed with nonverbal autism, and your son was diagnosed with nonverbal autism, and now my son is talking. That doesn't mean I'm taking away from your child, and I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
dim my son's light to make anybody
At
else
the same
comfortable
time.
in the room. Yes, I
Yeah.
want to congratulate my son for his accomplishments because he was diagnosed with nonverbal autism and he's
Mm-hmm.
talking.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Come
reading
on.
his sight words. You know, so I'm not going to dim his light. He still has autism. We still are all in the same boat. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just that he has autism different than your child has autism.
Yeah, I think that's important though because and I still experience it sometimes. When my daughter was first diagnosed, I would compare. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I would see all of these typically developing children
Yes.
and I would be like, dang, well, my baby isn't doing that.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Or
Yes.
dang, my baby isn't saying that. So I think it's very, very important to highlight that because all kids are different and they
Yes.
develop in their own way, at their own pace, on their own time.
Exactly.
So, yes,
Yes.
I love it.
So can you give us a couple of statistics about autism?
Yes, yes. So I could probably go on and on about the statistics around autism, but I did pull a few that I think are important for us to talk about.
Yes.
So,
And we're going to drop the links to all of the reports that we have read,
mm-hmm,
to all of the websites that we have visited, so you guys can do your own research as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important. We ain't pulling numbers out our butts,
Yes.
and. But okay, so the first statistic is going around something that you mentioned already. Autism is 4 times more prevalent in boys than it is in girls.
Yes.
I think that's very, very interesting, especially my daughter with Rett syndrome. Rett syndrome is exclusive to girls. Like boys, it's very rare that boys get, Rett's.
Yes.
So I think that's important to highlight. The second fact that I want to highlight is the fact that 31% of children with autism or adults with autism have an intellectual disability, but 44% are at or above the standard IQ.
Yes. Can you say it one more time?
44% standard or above, right?
Yes.
I think, how do you feel about that? I think that's important because, especially in our community.
Yes. I love telling this story about my son. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Go
I
ahead.
love telling this story about my son and how I got him to read and write and tell his colors. My son has been obsessed with cars since before he could talk, before he could walk, anything. He's been obsessed with cars. So I taught my son how to count with cars. This is 1 car, 2 car, 3 car, 4 car.
That's
I
smart.
taught him that this was a red car, a blue car, a green car, a yellow car. We was riding in the car one day and my son told me, hey, that's an excavator. I didn't know what an excavator was. I had to look up excavator because I'm like, what is he talking about? And sure enough, that was an excavator. So my son can tell you any car. He can go up under the hood and tell you what's under the hood, how many wheels it has. It just brings highlight to them being very intelligent in their own way.
Yes, I love that. That is so cool. And it's so crazy how our kids' minds work. They are really just brilliant.
Yes,
You know what I'm
I
saying?
agree.
So yeah, I love that. But let's get into the last and final fact, and we gonna just jump right into it. Minority groups tend to be diagnosed later and less than our counterparts.
Ooh, okay, you shaking the table.
We gonna let that simmer, okay?
Shaking the table.
So I'm gonna ask you, but I'm gonna give my experience as well. You tell me if you experienced this. So when my daughter was first diagnosed, I had people that were really close to me, tell me, oh, ain't nothing wrong with her. She'll talk when she won't.
Yes.
She'll walk when she feel like it.
Yes.
Did you experience that?
Yes. That is why I named my company We Are the Village, because you guys, it takes a village. You don't have to do anything alone. You are not by yourself. And we need the older generation to have our backs when it comes down to getting our children diagnosed, because I feel like that is something that parents failed to do back in the days. And many boys or kids that I grew up with, they got diagnosed with bad behavior and put in special education for bad behavior and things like that, not really getting the actual diagnosis because parents are like, oh, he'll grow out of it. Oh, he'll do this. Oh, he'll do that. No, I had to sit my family down and let them know, hey, We have to get on the same page in order for my child to succeed. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we did.
Yes, I love that you were able to connect with your family in that way because I still haven't, been able to have a sit down with my family. But it seems like everybody now is starting to follow suit because they
Yes.
like, okay, Mama was right,
Yes.
Kahari was right,
Yes.
But yeah, I think those are very, very important facts to, just highlight for our audience. Now, I want you to tell me because I believe that you have a really interesting story. Like your baby has a very interesting story. What are the causes of autism and what has your experience been?
What causes autism? Like we said before, we are going to drop links to all of the research that we have done, to the websites, to the posts, to everything, so you guys can do your own research. Research indicates that genetics are involved in the vast majority of cases. Children born to older parents are at a higher risk for having autism. Parents who have a child with ASD have a 2 to 18% chance of having a second child who is also affected. Studies show that among identical twins, if one child has autism, the other will be affected about 36 to 95% of the time. In non identical twins, if one child has autism, then their other is affected about 31% of the time. Over the last 2 decades, intensive research has asked whether there are any links in between childhood vaccinations and autism. The research shows, and they are very clear, vaccines do not cause autism.
What you say?
Again, vaccines do not cause autism. They have been researching it since 1980. No vaccine has caused autism in any child. So we really want to sway away from vaccines causing autism because they don't, y'all. They don't.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel comfortable talking about your story and how the process you went through with finding out your baby's diagnosis?
Yeah, so my son had caught a virus soon after I had him. He had caught the virus in the hospital. Me and my family all had got tested to make sure, we didn't pass it along to him. And all of us did not have anything. Hence, I was pregnant with my last child, and he came out just fine
While all of this was going on.
while all of this was going on. Yeah, he turned out just fine. And I was working close with Dr. Magno. That's his neurologist. She used to practice out in Mirabelle, but she stopped practicing. We got him a brain scan, and we noticed that the virus he had caused him to have severe brain damage. Not severe, mild brain damage, I'm sorry. And that's what eventually led to autism.
So now that we know the causes of autism, from one end or the other, let's talk about the signs of
Yes.
autism. I think this is really good, especially
Yes.
I know when I was first, before my daughter got her diagnosis, I was like Googling everything and
Yes.
trying to figure out, is this a sign? Is this a sign? So I have a list of like the most standard signs, but like we've been saying, everybody is different. Like the way that my kid presents is probably totally different from the way your
Yes.
kid presents. But
And I want to highlight this.
yeah.
Early intervention is the most important thing. Early intervention is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
My son has started getting therapy at 3 months, and it has helped tremendously. I had put my son in community schools, and I seen a regression in him because he was around children that he normally was not around.
Right.
And that just goes into me saying that the early intervention is very important because if you start early, you have a chance to help your child become more independent and not rely on his diagnosis because your child is not their diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Earlier intervention, even if your child is just speech delayed, because that happens. You know what I'm saying? And the child can still be typically developing, still get that help. You know what I'm saying? It's an easy process. Go to your doctor, get the referral, and make it happen. It's not gonna hurt your child. It's only going to make them better. So, yeah, signs of autism. So I got a few really, really common ones. Number one is gonna be little to no eye contact. Your baby has very great eye
Yes,
contact.
always have.
Yes, I love that. My baby does too. Not always, but she does now.
Yes.
Another one is little to no involvement with peers. Now this one, my baby is not She doesn't. She's a loner. She plays by herself, and that's just it. How
Yes.
about your baby?
Well, because I have three boys, my
Mm-hmm.
son loves his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
He interacts with his brothers a lot, but he likes to stay to himself.
Yeah.
Like he'll peek on his brothers and check on them outside, stay out there
Mm-hmm.
for about 5 minutes, and go back in the
Make sure they
house.
out there.
Yes, make sure they're there. And he takes his butt back in the house
Yeah.
because he likes to be by himself. He
Mm-hmm.
really watches TV by himself. He isolates himself a lot, but he still acknowledges his brothers and lets them know that he loves them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's awesome. A few other ones is going to be limited communication, missed milestones, stimming behaviors. And when I say stimming, I mean that can be like rocking or hand flapping. My daughter hand flaps a whole lot. It can be walking on your tiptoes. The last one is going to be fixating on very specific things. And you mentioned that your baby loves cars.
Yes.
And I think dinosaurs, ain't it?
Yes, he loves dinosaurs.
Yes, yes. So let me tell you about my daughters. My daughter, for the longest time, she would collect pins. She would just collect them. She wouldn't play with them. She would pick them up from all over the house. I work from home. So she'll pick them up all over the house and just hold them. Once she got over pins, she had a spatula that she would carry around with her. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like she goes through stages where she just likes certain things.
Yes.
But yeah.
And another thing, my son, he's so hilarious. He comes out and he asks me what type of dinosaurs does he have lined up. And of course, I don't know all the dinosaurs.
He quizzing you.
Yes, I don't know all the dinosaurs, so I'm naming what are common, Tyrannosaurus Rex, stuff like that. He's like, no, this is not that. This is that. This is that. This is that. And my son can't tell me that this is a chair that goes to a table, but he can name every dinosaur ever created, and he can tell you about a car from the rudder to the tudder. Like he's just very intelligent in his own way.
Yes, yes, I love it. So let's talk about how to get a diagnosis.
Okay. Diagnosing autism or ASD is very difficult. It's not going to be easy. You have to be consistent. You have to stay on the doctors. You have to go to your advocates. You have to get advice, because don't take, what anybody says to the heart. You have to do your own research, and you have to be a voice for your child, because you are their voice. So if you want your child to be at his or her best, you have to be an advocate for your child. Diagnosing autism spectrum disorder or ASD can be difficult because there is no medical test, like a blood test, to diagnose the disorder. Doctors look at child's development history and behavior to make a diagnosis. ASD can sometimes be detected at 18 months or older. By age 2, a diagnosis by an experienced professional can be considered very reliable. However, many children do not receive a final diagnosis until much older. And this is because you don't want your child to be misdiagnosed. Like I said, my child was misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
So you want him or her, so you want them to go through a lot of tests and do everything that they can do to prove to you, what they can do. We're not going to just go off of what you think your child can do, or you've seen him do it one time and you're not really sure. No, we're going to wait a little while. We're going to see what he can do as he gets older, because diagnosing a child at 18 months with autism is very difficult. You won't really know, because kids don't really talk that much. They don't really do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be quick. It's going to take some time to get your diagnosis. Just hang in there and do your best.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very important what you just said, though, because it is a long process and you do have to be on doctors, which is very sad, might I add. If you're not, I have experiences where I've had to talk to specialists and therapists and doctors and really heavy on the advocate for my kid, because they will give you the least information that they can. You know what I'm saying? You really got to do your own research and know the questions to ask, which is sad, but it's the reality of things. And, in my experience, I got my daughter diagnosed. It's actually, if you live in Northwest Indiana, it's called Mid-America Psychological Counseling. And I was connected with a Black doctor. She's very young, very, very helpful.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yes. Her name was Megan James, and she was just very transparent. She was actually a BCBA for years, but now she's a doctor. But she was very transparent. She was real about the process, and I was able to ask her, and some things I didn't even have to ask her. She was just offering information, which isn't normal. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or most of the time ain't normal.
Yes.
So just back to what you said, you gotta educate yourself
Yes.
and make sure that you're advocating for your kid, because it's not as important to anybody else as it is to you,
Yes,
right?
I agree. All
Yep.
right, so we're going to wrap it up. But before we go, if you are a parent and you are struggling with your child's diagnosis,
Hmm.
please, please, please reach out to us. This is why we exist. This is why Village Talk is here. We are here to be a safe place for parents to come and talk and vent, in a place where we can all relate. Like I said before, because my child is different on the spectrum than your child is, does not mean anything. We are all in this together.
Yes. I love it. And not only that, we're going to be leaving the links to all of our information. We're going to leave the link to Mid America, where I got my daughter's diagnosis. And also, if you have any questions, reach out to us,
Yes.
comment, message, and all of our socials will be in the description.
All righty. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thanks.